So as I said in a previous video, the toolbar contains all the tools you have available to yourself for editing your images. Tool could be a brush to paint an effect in. It could be a selection tool to select a certain part of the image. It could be a text tool to add text. It could be a shape tool to add a circle or rectangle. It's any number of things that you'll be able to use. You can customize the toolbar to only show the items that you want to be available, so that you don't have it cluttered up with a bunch of tools that you'll never use. You can also group like items to create a flyout menu, or ungroup items and place them directly on the toolbar if you don't want them to be grouped, you want them to be more accessible. You can also change the shortcut, although it's only a single key shortcut. And like menus and shortcuts, you can name a preset so that whenever you load your particular workspace, it opens that preset specifically for you. Now, one thing I didn't mention back with workspaces is that if you do multiple things in Photoshop, then you can have multiple workspaces designed for each one of those things. Maybe you're a compositor and you have certain tools that you use when you do composites. Maybe you build bulletins in here. You could have a different one for that. And then maybe you just added images. So you could have those three different things that you do and have three different kinds of workspaces. And each one of those workspaces could have its own set of custom menus, custom toolbar, and custom display of panels. So I just wanted to make sure that you were clear that that's one of the things, one of the reasons why you would also create a particular preset for toolbar in this case, or sets for menus, so that they become, if you have different workspaces, you have different sets of shortcuts and such. The dialog box for customizing the toolbar can be opened in a couple of ways. You already seen where you click on the edit and come down to create shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts or menu adjustments. You also have the toolbar here where you can open the toolbar for editing. But you also can come over to the toolbar where you have this three little dots, click and hold, and whenever it opens up, you've got this edit toolbar here. Either way opens up your customized toolbar dialog box. In the middle of the dialog box you have scrollable windows. On the left side is everything that you have defined in the current customized toolbar. Everything on the right side are tools that are not included with the current toolbar. And it's basically very simple to come in here and make changes. All it is drag and drop. All you have to do is click on the toolbar or the tool that you want to add to the toolbar and drag it over here. Once you do that, it becomes active. Now it's also whatever order you have in here is the same order that it will show up on the toolbar. And if you look over here, you'll notice that the slice tool is now come in above the move tool. So it's as simple as that. If I don't want it, I just take it and move it back. And now it's over here as its separate extra tool, and you can see that it's gone from the toolbar. Now, the way you group these things is that you just drag this down here until you see this blue line in the middle, and then you let go and they become a group. And it's probably a good idea to group items that have the same shortcut. These are the shortcuts right here. So if I grouped slice tool, for example, down here with this, which you can do, I now have a shortcut of I with a shortcut of C. And that doesn't really make a lot of sense, but you can do that. At least it doesn't make sense to me. So that's pretty much how you do it. What I like to do is come in and take things that I don't use and drag them over here to the extra tools, and that way my toolbar is shorter, and it also gives me the ability to see the things that I use more often. But if I decide that I want to use it, I'm going to close this without saving. If I decide that I want to use it, I can click and hold here and come down here click and hold, and come down here and select something like the eraser tool, and now I have the eraser tool. The eraser tool is not available on here because this is a smart object, but then I could use the eraser tool. And you can see the eraser tool is selected here. If I click and hold and come down here, I can select something else like the ruler tool. Now the ruler tool shows up here, and I could use the ruler tool over here to decide how far across that is. So that's a way that it's kind of like the menus where show all menus. You can click and hold here and it shows all of the extra tools that you can use, so you don't have to have everything on the left hand side here. Now once you select another tool, this goes back to the three little dots, and the three little dots is basically your indication that you can either go look at what's extra tools or you can open the toolbar, either way. So I wanted you to also notice that we have the little triangle here at the bottom of all of these indicates that these are groups. So if I click and hold, it shows the two items that are in this group, and you can select the other one. Now if I select, you notice that it has a shortcut of V for the move tool. If I select V, it's going to select the last one that you selected. So click and hold and go to this one. Whenever I go here and then select V, it's going to select this tool here, which is the artboard tool. If I want to select the move tool instead of the artboard tool, oops, what I have to do is click and hold and go back to the move tool. Or what you could do is with the move tool to switch between the two different menu items in here is you can just shift V will take you through each one of the items. So if I wanted to go through the lasso tool items, I could do L, and then I could do shift L, and it would cycle through all the different tools in that way. Now there's also another way where you don't have to press the shift. If you go to Photoshop Preferences and go to Tools, there is a checkbox here that says use shift key for tool switch, and if you turn that off and click OK, now if you just hit L, for example, it will go through them without pressing the shift, which I think is pretty slick. So I like to leave it with that shift requirement turned off. So that's kind of how to get around in the toolbox or the toolbar. And if I wanted to come in here and make a change, here's what you can do. If I decided I didn't want the artboard tool in here, I take it and move it over here, leave it by itself. Let's say I also don't like to have, I typically don't do anything with the pen tool, so I could take the pen tool and move it over here and move all of those over here, keep them in the group. So now I have no pen tool over here, and I'm going to say that this is the one I want to do, I want to keep. So I can say I want to save this preset. So I can save this preset and call it RTPC Toolbar, oops, Photoshop Learning. And now I have that, and that's what's loaded. So if I decide I want to restore defaults, I just click that, and now I have defaults, which means basically I have every tool out here is over there. And if I decide I don't want that, I can clear tools. I have no tools out there. But then I can also come back in here and say load a preset, and I can say RTPC Learning, click OK, and now I'm back to where I was a minute ago with no pen tool over here and only one move tool. So it makes it, I mean, it's so simple, it's just drag and drop. The thing you have to watch out for is grouping, and grouping them in a way so that you have the same shortcut. If you don't like a shortcut, like the crop tool is C, that's one that makes sense, but W for quick selection or magic wand tool if you wanted to have something else, or you can't have S because S is for the clone stamp tool. So you have to come up with a different one that's not already being used, otherwise it gets confused and it's going to pick the first one that's on the list, and that's all it's going to pick. So it's pretty simple to come in here and create your own toolbar and see what shows up over here. If you never use some of these, again, you can drag them over here and have them as extras, and then all you have to do is press and hold here and you can go to the extras that way. So I wanted to show you basically that is in regard to creating the tools availability, and you can create a very small toolbar. If you only use 4 or 5 tools, you can create a very simple one and always have availability of what the extra tools are. So at the bottom of the dialog box down here, this thing called Show, you have these 4 thumbnails here. And what these 4 thumbnails indicate, for example, this ... indicates this up here. If you don't want that to show up, or you cannot get to your tools or your extra tools, you can definitely do that. If I take that and turn it off, now you don't see the ... And the only way to get to this custom toolbar would be to go through the edit and then toolbar and come here, and then you could get your extra tools. But that means that you don't have these extra tools ever available to you. So I always like to keep that turned on. The second one here has to do with the foreground and background color, and that's maybe a little bit ambiguous right now, but the foreground background colors will become obvious whenever we begin to do more with editing our images. But right now, just know that foreground background colors are these two here. So you have white and black, and you can switch them just by clicking. Well, you can't do it while this is open. You can switch them just by clicking on that back and forth. So the foreground background color is pretty important to keep available. I use it all the time just as a visual, and basically that's all I do here as a visual. If you wanted to switch them back and forth, you can also use the X key on the keyboard to go back and forth. It's the shortcut to switch from foreground and background rather than clicking on this little 90-degree arrow. The third one here has to do with quick mask. Quick mask is something that's probably well down the road to talk about quick mask. When we do selections, it's a way to create selections with the brush rather than with a selection tool. So it's a pretty interesting way to do it, and you can just click here to open the selection, or excuse me, open the quick menu or the quick edit tool. So it's pretty useful. I leave it on there most of the time because I use it on occasion, but I can always just use the shortcut of Q, gets you there as well. The last one here has to do with your display, your screen display. And if you, let me turn it off here, if you click that, it goes to different displays. So you can go to full screen, that sort of thing. But you can also just hit the F key and it does the same thing to toggle you through the different displays. So I typically leave it turned off. So for me, I turn off the display, and I could, really could turn off the quick mask, especially you could too, since you're not going to use it probably for a while. So this is kind of it for how you get around customizing the toolbar. Again, you just drag and drop what you want on the toolbar from your extra tools. What you don't want on the toolbar, take it from the toolbar over to extra tools. Try to keep everything grouped together that has the same shortcut key. And those that don't have a shortcut key, you can try to assign a shortcut key to them. All of these have shortcut keys, which is nice. But you have things like the single column marquee tool and this single row marquee tool have no shortcut keys. So you typically would group those with marquee tools anyway, and then they're available even though there's no shortcut to get to them. I don't know if that makes sense or not. But Shortcuts you can create. You could, if you group them with your marquee, such as the rectangular marquee and the elliptical marquee, you could put an M on there to also have a shortcut key that goes to them. Now I didn't show you this earlier, but you can move an entire group. If you hover over until the entire blue or a blue box covers the entire group, then you can click and drag the entire box over here. So it's basically just anywhere around the edge until it turns in the entire blue box around the entire group, and then you can move it over. So now that would take care of, I'm not going to move anything else, I just want to show you that example. So now I would save this preset to Photoshop Learning. You can see Photoshop Learning. Save. I'm going to replace it, and now this is the toolbox or the toolbar that I've defined for me. So you can see that when I say done, that now I have only one move tool. I have no pen tool in here. I just have these items. So that's a good way to go in and just make an adjustment for something that you never use and move forward. Again, in that same thing, I also remove some of the things at the bottom down here. So I just want to point that out, that that's a good way to move and kind of create your own little toolbar with only what you use. That's really everything I wanted to talk about with the toolbar. So it's very simple, drag and drop and save to a template. It's a little bit of a different way than it is with the menus, where you have the eyeball that you turn on and off in the menus, and here you drag and drop to two different areas. So pretty simple, pretty easy, and should make your life a lot easier as you move along with your Photoshop learning.